we've got this enormous game coming up this Saturday. Pittsburgh's hosting Miami.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on this one, I got to admit, I have not been impressed with this Pitt football team until Saturday. So I have not given them much credit for anything but beating a lot of bad football teams, just kind of like they did last season. Was last season the year they started 7-1, lost the last 5 consecutive games? Yeah. So I thought that was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and that pretty much turned out to be the case. However, they show up in Atlanta on Saturday night and just lay waste to Georgia Tech. Certainly Tech got back into the game, but there was no question who the better team was. And Pitt, to their credit, when things got a little shaky there, made the big plays and, certainly made up for an interesting call by Pat Narduzzi and opting for an onside kick there. But so let's start with that, your evaluation of Pitt's play just on Saturday night against Georgia Tech, because obviously, this is, in a sense, because Pitt won the ACC in 2021 and played a lot of meaningful games there, but there wasn't the playoff setup that there is now. They weren't going to make a playoff. So you can make an argument that this was the most important game for Pitt football since like the Dan Marino era.
100%. I mean, unless you count the Fiesta Bowl against Utah in 2004 when Urban Meyer coached Utah, even though he already took the Florida job, if you remember that weird situation. Sure. Unless you count that, and the only reason I would throw that in there is because, as you kind of alluded to, despite some success, even under Narduzzi, Pitt has actually not won a major bowl game in decades. They lost the major bowl game. They lost the Peach Bowl in that 2021 year. Pitt fans will say Kenny Pickett didn't play, and that's true. And yeah, there wasn't the expanded playoffs, so they didn't have a chance at a national title. But they did lose that. They lost that Fiesta Bowl to Utah. It's been a while, and the Narduzzi era has kind of been that roller coaster ride, because in the middle of what we're talking about, there was a 3-9 year where they brought in Phil Jurkovec, lost the backyard brawl, and then it just all went off the rails. So to Narduzzi's credit, though, he maybe doesn't get enough credit for this. His teams usually do rally at the end of the season. He usually does squeeze the most he can get out of the team. Yeah, they had that slide last year. But this year does feel like it is a quintessential Pat Narduzzi year where he is turning the corner. They are able to shake off the backyard brawl loss, which still appears to be a really, really bad loss. They also had a loss to Louisville. And yeah, they beat up on some rough teams, some bad teams that aren't really contenders. But he's getting the most out of his team. And that's kind of where I thought it would end, like you. But then they go to Atlanta and get the biggest win of the season, get the biggest win in a while, arguably get the biggest win for Narduzzi maybe in his tenure. I'm sure he would say the ACC title is his biggest win, but this is right up there. It's a ranked opponent on the road. No one can deny this being a quality victory. They weirdly are still ranked behind them in the AP poll, which I know is in the ire of Pitt fans. It's part of what I just said is why, though, their resume with the West Virginia loss and all of that is hard to get over, and that's why they're ranked behind them. But it only means so much because, yes, in 2021 they won the ACC, but they had a really bad Group of 5 loss earlier in that season. It wasn't even in the conversation that them being a playoff team, even when they won the title, and I'm not sure they would have necessarily got in even in expanded field, because they had a really bad loss there. Who knows? It might have been a similar dynamic of this, where the ACC was looked down upon. They're taking advantage kind of down years for the top dogs in the conference. It's kind of what Narduzzi's done. But if you beat Miami, which maybe can happen, you're at home. Miami's looked vulnerable this year. They've had hiccups against teams that you've had hiccups against if you're Pitt. But that's not necessarily enough, because the Georgia Tech win isn't going to mean all that much to the history of the program if they still end up in the Sun Bowl. If they need help, they beat Miami, and then you need, which seems more unlikely. This is almost a conversation. Is it more likely that Pitt beats Miami, or is it more likely that SMU or Virginia would lose? They have easy games. They should walk through those games and get those wins. And if they both win, Pitt could win to take a phrase from Narduzzi, Pitt could win by 100 and it won't matter. So that's kind of where the Pitt program is now. You have to give credit for turning the season around. Many Pitt fans wanted him fired, thought the season was going to be another 3-9 year after the Brawl loss, and he turns it around. He beats the teams on his schedule. But in all reality, yeah, this is the Georgia Tech win is literally not only the first quality win, it's the first win they had over a winning team. They were beating teams that didn't even have winning records. So I don't think Pitt deserves ranked any higher than they are. I don't think Pitt had any chance of a bid outside of winning a conference title, but they have a chance now in the final week, which is more than a lot of teams can say.
So, Mike, obviously the season is a success to date. And again, they've got this huge game coming up here. But looking back, whatever level of success it reaches, the turning point's going to go back to Mason Heinchel and what he provided when Eli Holstein got hurt, the former Bama transfer, and then Heinchel comes in. And so for you and other people that follow Pitt football, was there an inkling that this guy was this good and had this much talent?
I mean, there are some that liked some throws during fall camp and spring ball. There are some that now try to say that they saw more talent there, but in all reality, no. I don't think I can say that, nor anybody can say that. And I'm not so sure Pat Narduzzi in his heart of hearts can say that. I wasn't down in Atlanta, even on the broadcast. They talked about how Cade Bell had to convince Narduzzi multiple times, if you watch the game, to even really care about this kid, because he was an 18-year-old who's an afterthought. Yeah, he got, being at Bama's cool, but Narduzzi wasn't fully sold. He mostly saw film of him just running and scrambling. That's kind of what Bama used him in practices. All the film was just him scrambling around, even from high school. And then Cade Bell was able to sprinkle in enough of him as a pocket passer to impress Narduzzi enough, because Narduzzi's offense is not Rich Rodriguez's offense. For another program I cover, you got to have to throw the football. It's not, he doesn't want just basically a runner who scrambles around and tries to do with his legs. It's totally different. So he was able to show him enough. And again, to the credit of Narduzzi to take him on. And this is now the second year where a quarterback out of nowhere who was an afterthought at a better program comes in and leads Pitt to more success. Eli Holstein did it a year ago, but as you mentioned, that season then totally cratered out and they lost games. They got injured and they didn't even win their mediocre bowl game, as bad as that season ended. But Mason Heichel's look right now like the real deal. I mean, the question around Pittsburgh now, actually, and this is just how college football works these days, as you could imagine. The question right now around Pittsburgh is, how can they possibly keep him around? How is this actually even that great? Because they're almost having him be too good that there is no chance of him coming back. That is the conversation now, that Pitt financially is not rolling in cash. I mean, they literally fired an AD because of money in the midst of a season that actually they were winning at that point. That was when they were ranked. So I could go on for days on Victory Heights, which people can look up, and different things that are financial issues there. And basketball fans, I highly doubt Jeff Capel's fired, as insane as that may sound to outsiders. He's losing buy games, and they're probably stuck with him due to a buyout and the financial issues. Narduzzi's the best coach there. He's the coach they want to invest in there. They are bought into him, and certainly his job is fine after this year, despite a new AD. But they can't go financially against Ohio State or USC or Bama or Oklahoma or those programs and expect to just outbid for a quarterback with 3+ years of eligibility left, who people think is one of the top 10 in the country. And he's playing like it. He's hitting the spots. He has an arm. He's not making mistakes. He comes off like a leader. He's playing like a veteran. And that's why they're in this situation. He even kind of brushed his shoulders off and helped this team get over Georgia Tech almost coming back in the game. That was a picture-perfect film for other teams to say, nope, come here. Because that looks like a quarterback that could lead a team through playoff success. Just getting there might be the issue. So he looks like the real deal. I did not see it coming. I don't think anyone really did. Eli Holstein was supposed to be this saving grace and do it this year. He was supposed to be better this year than last year. I covered the brawl. He was really bad in that game. It was kind of the beginning of the end. And him and Cade Bell, there were rumors that they kind of had it out a little bit in the locker room after the brawl. It just looks like Eli Holstein lost favor there. And then once Narduzzi pulled the trigger, you can't get the job back the way Mason's playing. But that's the issue. Is he going to be around? And he could light up Miami. They could crawl in somehow with one of those other teams losing. The ceiling appears to be this year unless they somehow can get lucky and keep him. That would almost be more important than somehow winning the ACC. If they somehow end up in the offseason where he announces he is coming back. I think that would be maybe the biggest win for Narduzzi, because I think they think that if that's the case and they have 3 more years of this and he plays like this and he keeps getting better, they should win another ACC title, especially with other programs who do have more money than them are kind of down and looking to rebuild and kind of in chaos right now. The Clemsons, the Florida States of the world, maybe even Miami, if they would blow it, then that would be another disappointing year despite money spent. But is that likely in this climate for him to come back? I don't know. I mean, he's not talking about it. No one wants to talk about it in his camp. If you're a Pitt fan, you're nervous that he's not going to come back.
So, Mike, any college football program that plays in the shadow of an NFL team has an issue to deal with. USC, UCLA against Los Angeles, the University of Washington in Seattle, the University of Houston just making it back into power conference play.
Cincinnati, even with how great this year
Cincinnati,
they're in a pro market.
Georgia Tech's in Atlanta. However, there's a different. It almost seems like I can distinguish USC and UCLA from the LA sports scene, the football scene, and obviously the University of Washington's had great success and they play in their own stadium. And that's what I'm getting to. It must be tied to playing in the same stadium that I always think of Pitt football as, when is anybody going to, and I am, this is a lot of hyperbole. I understand that there are thousands of people that care about Pitt football in the city of Pittsburgh and throughout Pennsylvania. But it just, and again, they're also in the shadow of not just an NFL team, but one of the stalwarts of the league over the past 50 plus years.
Yeah, there's a lot of Steeler fans all over, for sure.
So in a season like this, where there's some hope, but it might be a bit false hope. And of course, they had the huge game against Notre Dame and they got completely wiped out.
Right. That's when they owned the city. They owned the city for that day and they didn't perform at all. And that was the conversation after, that they dropped the ball in a way.
You've been covering this program for a long time. And again, you've seen glimpses of, for a couple weeks, they look like they might do something. Yeah. Does the city, do they get the backing?
So I will tell you, it's
I guess I got my answer with that laugh.
Yeah, right. Like the conversation in Pittsburgh today on talk radio, on social media, amongst media members, among fans,
Aaron
through
Rodgers,
the public,
I would think,
and in group text is the Steelers. Is when is Rodgers going to come back? Mason Rudolph didn't get it done. The defense is getting paid too much money, and they dropped the ball. And people want Mike Tomlin fired, and when are the Steelers ever going to get with the modern times and maybe move on from Tomlin? That's the conversation today. There's even a little sprinkle of our national reporters actually reporting the truth when they're saying the Pirates are going to spend money, because no one believes they are. But that is actually sprinkled in a little bit, because now Ken Rosenthal today basically refuted his colleagues' report saying they didn't actually offer anybody any money. So now that's a debate going on. As insane as that sounds, if I had to rank, maybe Pitt is ahead of the Penguins right now in conversation, and that's weird because the Penguins are winning and there are a lot of hockey fans in the city. I don't know how long that would go, but I would probably rank the conversation of the day as Pitt third behind those two things, and a distant third. The Steelers are way up there, little Pirates talk, and then Pitt. And on a regular basis, I would say the Steelers own the conversation year round. Maybe the Penguins butt in there because you have Sidney Crosby, you have generational players, you've won Stanley Cups. The Pirates are discussed almost at a negative where people make fun of them, of course, and then there are some fans that do love them, and then you sprinkle the college scene. But this is the dynamic of Pitt sports in general. It's not even just football, but it happens with the basketball program as well. It can be a blessing and it can be a curse. I even said this to a colleague because the funny thing is, Mark, on the same day the Steelers had their loss and they had their blown game, Pitt basketball lost a bye game to Quinnipiac. But no one cared because the Steelers had their issues on the same day. So Jeff Capel's able to sit up there with minimal media members in front of him, with minimal conversation surrounding him, knowing he's in year 8, but going to stay purely based on money, losing a bye game, and no one talking about it. And the only because of the Steelers. So that's a little benefit. You can go under the radar when it's really, really bad. Again, if that happened to West Virginia in a college town or Penn State in State College in a college town, it is just discussed, morning, noon, and night. Pitt is able to get away from that when things are bad. When things are good, though, and Narduzzi definitely is bothered by this. Narduzzi, I think, I can tell you, he's annoyed by the dynamic in the market for sure, but this is part of it. He does think that the city does not support Pitt enough. He does think that it's weird, and he does not like that there are a lot of members of Pittsburgh media that are alums of their rival schools. He does not like that a lot of I'm one of them. I'm a WVU alum that covers a lot of Pittsburgh sports, of course. He doesn't like that. He does not like that there are a lot of fans of Penn State and West Virginia that live in Pittsburgh, that pack his stadium whenever they're there, or even in general. I mean, if you look at the pictures, there were literally West Virginia fans that went down to game day in Pittsburgh just to talk to McAfee. That there is no Pitt fan going to game day if it's in Morgantown. 0 people will be there. No one will be able to be put in the front row. No one will be on camera. It's not happening. But it happened in Pittsburgh because it's a pro market. It's not a college market. That's the dynamic of that market that I don't think Narduzzi's ever fully understood. It definitely annoys him when he shares a facility with the Steelers and there are media members covering the Steelers who wear a WVU hat, for example. I know for sure he's tried to get people to remove them, and he's had to be told by the Steelers, we can't tell them to take a hat off while they're covering the Steelers. They're allowed to be an alum of the school they went to and wear a hat. What are you talking about? You don't own the Steelers. And then he just, rolls his eyes and moves on. But that would never happen in a college town. That's the dynamic that goes on with Pitt sports. It can be a blessing and a curse, and it's worse for them than any of the other ones you mentioned. Yeah, even Cincinnati has their own freaking stadium, even though it's old, and I've been there. I covered a game there. It's old. It's old school. It's not modernized at all. It's not that big, but they're not sharing with the Bengals, so people there are looking at the Bearcats. That's not even the case for Pitt. And I also don't think there's any signs of them getting their own stadium or moving out of there anytime soon. I mean, even their AD spoke about it and literally said there are no plans in place. Out of all the financial things they need to talk about and they need to worry about, a stadium is not going to be at the top of that list unless they somehow get, insane amount of money from donors that's not there right now. They're not going to fund it themselves. And I don't even know where you'd put it. If you've been to Pittsburgh, you can't put a Pitt stadium for the college in a suburb in Monroeville. For anyone who knows Pittsburgh, you can't do that. You got to be in the city limits. You got to be on campus, ideally. There's no room for it. And the only place there's kind of room is actually a landmark that they can't take down. So that's the issue with Pitt right now. But hey, if they beat Miami and they crawl in the ACC title game, I think they'll get a little bit of a buzz. They did get a buzz in 2021 that's more than any other year. But if they win and then they don't get in the ACC title game, I think that'll fade out. If they lose, that'll fade out. That's just the case. It peaks and valleys with the interest for Pitt sports, good or bad, because you're in a pro market and the Steelers, they take the cake, and that's win or lose.
So, Mike, this matchup on Saturday reminds me of 2017 when Miami rolled in at 10-0. That was actually on a Friday, Black Friday after Thanksgiving, and it's colder conditions than Miami would like, and it was kind of a lazy kind of football game. And I'm trying to think, I cannot think of number 15, the backup quarterback who played for Pitt that day. That was, oh shoot. Anyway, because that was like he had come into the game against Virginia Tech the week before, and anyway, finished the season, then was Pitt starting quarterback for a year or two after that. But anyway, regardless, kind of has that vibe or that feel, because Miami is playing for a lot here, even though they're basically shut out of the ACC championship as well. They have a slim chance of being the one team in the ACC that would have the resume to be an at-large at 10-2. So they're playing for their season against Pitt. But do we have any weather forecasts and anything nasty coming Pitt's way in Saturday?
Well, not nasty. It's going to be cold. I'm not aware of snow. We really haven't had snow yet. It's been pretty mild right now in Pittsburgh. It's going to be really, really cold. It's supposed to rain tomorrow, so we're still early in the week. I don't know about snow at that point. I'm sure Pitt would love snow, rain, sleet, hail, whatever. Although they do like to throw the football, so this is not exactly ground and pound Pittsburgh Steeler like olden days. That would disrupt them a little bit as well, but I'm sure they would prefer it because the Florida boys coming up there, they would get some turnovers. That's probably what they would prefer. But yeah, I mean, there have been some wins. I mean, you mentioned that game. Kenny Pickett also beat Miami and crushed their dreams in the beginning of his career in what was a 5-7 year. He got that win, one of his maybe first big wins. Pitt has a history of ruining Miami seasons. As you're, mentioning, you have to argue how much of the season are they really ruining, even if Pitt would beat Miami, because Miami can't really get in the ACC title game. They're pretty much blocked out. And because of that, they're going to be blocked out from the playoff likely. They're likely not even going to get in as an at-large, even with a win, but certainly wouldn't, obviously, if they lose. But they're ranked way behind Notre Dame, who they did beat. But it's the same reason why Pitt's ranked behind Georgia Tech, that, the voters are starting. It's been a while, but the voters are starting to take the whole season into account here. It didn't used to occur, but you're seeing some people bring up, well, hey, Pitt lost to West Virginia, who going to be 4-8, or hey, this team lost to that team. It was a month ago, but it happened in real life. Like, we're going to count it still. So that's holding those teams back, and that's going to block Miami from even getting in as an at-large bid. They're not going to be able to win the conference. They messed it up themselves. I mean, they had it on, right there in a silver platter. They had the team, they had the money, they had the roster. They already had a big win on the board early in the season against the Fighting Irish, and then they collapsed in conference play. It's what Miami's been doing. They should own the NIL world with the finances and resources there, despite being a private school. They haven't been doing that at all. Wouldn't be shocked if Pitt beat them. I wouldn't be totally shell-shocked because of what you mentioned and because it is home, and Pitt obviously riding high now off the Georgia Tech game. But Miami's also a good team with a good roster, and they certainly can win. And even, it would almost be perfect Pitt to get those 2 wins at the end of the year, lose the game day game, and still not be an ACC title game because the other teams in SMU and Virginia just take care of business against the bottom feeders. That would be quintessential Pat Narduzzi Pitt football, really Pitt football the last 40 years. I mean, that would be 100% perfect, and I think Pitt fans would agree with that. So we'll see what happens. If I had to bet, I think Miami's going to probably win this game. I think Pitt is more in the middle of, they took advantage of Georgia Tech making a lot of mistakes and looking really, really bad. And especially offensively, when Georgia Tech's not looked that bad offensively all year, and maybe they're overrated if you look at their overall schedule. To Pitt didn't have any quality wins prior. Notre Dame, obviously a CFP team, destroyed them. They have some bad losses. It's hard to really be too high on Pitt doing it again, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened, and crazier things have happened in the Pitt-Miami kind of rivalry. That's not really one, but has been made into one outside of the Big East because, Pitt has ruined some Miami seasons.
Right, Mike. What is the best way for people to find you and your work?
Sure, at Mike Ostie 11 on social media, really all over social media. Pittsburgh Sports Now for the Pitt covers that we're talking about here, WVU or WV Sports Now, West Virginia Sports Now for the WVU coverage. We also have Nittany Sports now within the family of networks. And, of course, a lot going on there, to say the very, very least. A lot going on there. We could talk hours on end about what's going on there and what I know what's going on there. Yard Barker for some national writing. I am heard on Sirius XM, have a few shows of my own. Mic Drop, my personal podcast, mostly Pittsburgh sports and some national talk, and even Mountaineer Report for West Virginia coverage there. But happy to jump on here with you, Mark, for sure. And it is amazing. I don't think anyone would have believed it, that after the backyard brawl, Pitt would be going into the final week of the season with an actual chance to then have a chance at the college football playoff. I mean, that is wild. It really, really is wild, especially after game day too. So to even be in this situation, man, just when you think Narduzzi might be down, where there's new AD coming in, has a really bad loss, they're getting made fun of, fans are kind of out. He's like the Undertaker. He's that, he just keeps getting up, and you just can't. I think we're year 11, 12. Like Narduzzi, he's not going anywhere no matter what. Like he's not going anywhere. He's maybe you think he's a cockroach if you're a Pitt fan, but his tenure has been overall really successful if you look at the last 30, 40 years of Pitt football, despite some lean years. So